Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those best practices, technologies, service products, and at the same time, the leadership that's going to take us through to 2050 when we have a planet of about 9 billion people, and by the end of the century, maybe 12 to 13 billion. So how are we going to take care of all these people, at the same time allow them to contribute to their own individual societies and their local areas, and at the same time to enhance the quality of the environment around the world? Actually, I have a gentleman sitting right beside me, a good friend of long-standing. This is Charles. He goes by Chuck D. Vollmer, author and founder of what's called Jobenomics and Jobenomics blog. And Chuck is actually working on all these different topics and ways to bring green jobs into local communities, but at the same time to create many new businesses, and that's really his thrust, is creating the new businesses and then adding jobs for that. So Chuck, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Good evening.
Glad to have you back. Anyway, tell us a little bit about the mission and the vision as far as Jobenomics and also the Jobenomics blog.
In short, Jobenomics is the economics of business and job creation. And we try to maximize the number of small businesses and jobs created. We're shooting for 20 million new jobs in the next decade in the United States. And we really focus on the people at the bottom of the social-economic pyramid. And what we're talking about is minorities, women, youngsters, Generation Z particularly. Those are the ones that are 21 and younger, veterans and other people that are in financial distress.
Yeah, and this is something that you and I talked about some time ago when I first learned about what you're doing, this 20 by 20, 20 million new jobs by 2020. And you've just continued to broaden that base, being more inclusive, bringing more groups into that whole thing. But tell us, before we get into really the meat of Jobenomics and the Jobenomics blog, is where did the name come from? Jobenomics is a newly created word, and it's something that you've now spread all over the globe. But what does it really mean?
Well, it stands for jobs plus economics. We've spent a lot of time looking at over the last decade essentially the principle of how do you mass produce jobs? And you mass produce jobs with businesses. Businesses create jobs, jobs don't create jobs. And neither government can't create jobs. They can create some jobs, like infrastructure jobs and that things, but they tend not to be enduring. So how do we take the different merging initiatives, what's going to happen next in the future, and mass produce small businesses to mass produce jobs?
Now you talk about Jobenomics being a national grassroots movement. Let's break that down. Grassroots, yeah. We understand. Movement. Let's focus on that.
Well, it originated, I was on one of the presidential campaign commissions, and I was asked to look at security. I have a security background, and so I started writing things about the economy. And they say, wait a minute, this is wrong. You know, we want to talk about tanks and airplanes. You're an old fighter pilot, talk about that. And I said, look, there's really three types of security. There's national security, homeland security, and economic security. And I said, number one priority is economic security.
Yeah, and this is what many people are saying. Even the 4-star and the 3 and the 2-star generals are saying, you know, everything that we're trying to do is based on economic security. And so looking at that as this movement, how did you create this? Because you have, I understand, over 1 million people that come to read your blog and are all part of your network. You've gone way beyond that. So explain that movement part, how that really has taken off.
Well, let's start off with writing the book, which will discuss here, and that book was published. It was started in actually before the recession, Great Recession. I was talking about economic security, and so when I was writing about derivatives and sovereign wealth funds and how do you mass produce jobs, everybody kind of laughed, and then we hit the Great Recession, and so I met with a number of people in Wall Street, and they said, write a book about this. So I wrote a book. And then I've written about essentially 5 or 6 other books, and the first book was published. The other ones are online, which you can get that. And so what has happened since that, we went through several different stages. We started kind of the lecturing and meeting stage, where I spent 20, 30 visits to Capitol Hill, and then I moved to the lecture circuit, and then that's when you kind of picked me up back when, and we did some radio and TV,
right.
And I've done that. But what's happened is the blog really took off, and just over the last year, we've gone. The people reading the blog has gone up 400%.
That's incredible, 400%.
Yeah, this last month we had almost 700,000 hits on our website per month.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Yeah, per month.
This is a monthly thing.
Yeah, a monthly
so
thing.
it just keeps increasing then.
So then the blog got really hot, and then about a year or so ago, what happened is that local communities started coming and saying, hey, can we do Jobenomics, this city, that city, this state? And as we'll talk a little bit more, we have now 7 city-states initiatives, and we're going to try to get to all 50 states. Mm-hmm. And essentially, Jobenomics is, I'm the Appleseed guy. I put all the information and the how-tos, and we've got essentially on our website probably 1,500 pages worth of very detailed where the jobs are going, what businesses are going, and the like. And people are downloading, and then they come to me and say, hey, can you help us define this for my community or my state?
So, and what they can do then, depending on the target audience within their own community or the jobs that they want to create, then they can pick and choose from, it's really almost like a smorgasbord of, all different items that they can do. But going back to this employment report that you do, it's about 140 pages.
Yeah.
So it's good for holding down tables and doing all kinds of things like that. But it's very interesting and detailed research that you're putting into this.
Yeah.
So tell us about the employment report.
Yeah, we do a quarterly Jobenomics employment analysis, and it looks at all the industries, all the occupations in the United States, and where all the trends and what effect does it have on the labor force. And we say, okay, these are what the jobs are. We actually go into a lot of demographics, mm-hmm. the demographics of each of the racial and ethnic minorities, gender. We look at age, where the jobs are, and then we look at wages. And it's actually shocking that the people that took a wage last year, there's about 160 million that took a wage of some form. 72% make below average wage. And that doesn't include the 95 million that have voluntarily left the workforce.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to be talking about in a bit. But this whole thing about doing it by the numbers, that's what I like about the research that you're doing, Chuck, that you're really deep diving into the numbers. So, I mean, this is the epitome of, big data and all that. And so when you're looking at it, then you hear the reports on radio and television or see the reports in the newspapers, something doesn't jive there in all of this. So what are they missing as far as the employment reports? And then we're going to get to the other report in just a minute.
Sure. Well, we thoroughly document all our sources, and they're all federal, state.
So it's all FOI, it's all available?
It's all available. We every one of the 250 or so references, footnotes we have in there, we all put the URL or where you get this stuff, right. So it's very easy to go check where it is. Mm-hmm. What the difference is that most of the media, most of the politicians, actually the politicians are worse, and both sides of the aisle are worse than the media because they cherry pick the numbers. Mm-hmm. And so you need to take a systems approach.
Right.
You need to look at unemployment if you're looking at employment. You need to look at people that are in the workforce that are out of the workforce. You need to look at the standard workforce versus contingent work, and on and on.
And then the education levels and locations, right. Geographical distribution, and all those things.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time on the education. Actually, we say we challenge education versus skills-based training. Mm-hmm. And we say for certain groups, education is the route to success. But for the majority of the workers, especially the 72% of the workers that make below minimum wage, really skill-based training is the right answer.
The way to go. Yeah, and now we have this what's called the unemployment report. And
right.
You don't normally hear about an unemployment report.
Yep.
And I think this really goes to the heart of the excellence of what you're trying to achieve, is that we have all this over here on the employment side, but the forgotten is in the unemployment numbers. Tell us about why you wanted to have this unemployment report.
Well, there's really 4 categories of people in the United States as far as the labor force. You have the employed, and then you have the unemployed, and then you have the voluntary people that leave the workforce, and then you have the people that can't work. From a Jobenomics position, people that can work, whether they work or not, or should be counted as unemployed, as long as they're able-bodied citizens. If you look at those 2 categories of unemployed and not in the workforce, you got 15 million unemployed. That includes the underemployed, that's the U6 rate. And you have 94 million that have voluntarily left the workforce. So we really focus on just the people that are looking for work that don't have work. Mm-hmm. We don't say, okay, I don't have work and I'm not looking because I'm on welfare, I'm going to school, for whatever reason. So it is fundamentally the way we calculate in the United States the unemployment rate. We could have a 0 unemployment rate that quick. The only way I could do that is to say, hey, everybody, quit looking for a job. And we'd have 0 rate of unemployment. So all this hoopla about 10%, 9%, 8%, we're down to 5% now. It totally ignores the fact that all the frustrated, discouraged workers, or the people that decide they want to go to welfare and just voluntarily quit and left, are no longer enrolled in the unemployment. So we take a more systematic view.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's by the numbers, and that's what you're doing.
Right now, the unemployment rate is officially the official. That's the
what's from the government.
There are 6 categories.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the U3 rate. It's kind of the middle rate. Is about 5%. But if you add in all the rest of the guys that can work, they're underemployed, marginally employed, or can work and don't, the unemployment rate is 34%.
My goodness, that's not something that politicians want you to hear. We got time for maybe 2 more questions, at least
Good.
one. What about the new administration? What are they going to face coming in, and what do they need to attack, head on very quickly?
Okay.
Unless we got to make it quick.
Okay, from an employment, unemployment, from a Jobenomics perspective, we're pleased that the new administration is got a business viewpoint. Again, jobs don't create jobs, businesses do. Mm-hmm. Our concern is more of a top-down approach, big business approach, lowering taxes, that type of thing. We want to mass produce from the bottom up.
Okay, and where's Jobenomics going over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Hopefully we're going to have 50 state initiatives and probably 10 million hits to the website if we get the international community involved.
Fantastic. This is Charles Chuck D. Vollmer, author, founder, Jobenomics blog, as we create the Emerald Planet.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed all that.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Open enrollment is back. Enroll Virginia wants you to get covered for 2016 and beyond. You have until January 31st to enroll in affordable health care. If you wish to have coverage by January 1st, you must enroll by December 15th. That's less than a month from now. Remember, the penalty for not having health insurance next year is a minimum of $695 per person. Don't think twice about it. To find an enrollment event near you or to get free help with the application, visit our webpage or give us a call. El periodo de inscripción ha comenzado. Enroll Virginia quiere que tú y tu familia tengan cobertura médica este próximo 2016. Tienes hasta el 31 de enero para inscribirte. Si deseas cobertura desde el 1 de enero, debes inscribirte antes del 15 de diciembre. Recuerda que si no tienes cobertura el próximo año, te multarán una suma mínima de $695 por cada adulto. No lo pienses más y visita nuestra página para más información o para ayuda con la solicitud.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning? Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me, you're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me. Okay, but remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis as we look for those 1,000 best practices, technology, services, products, and the people are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And how are we going to be able to employ all of these people? We're adding about 2 billion new people, it's estimated, by 2050, to make sure that they're actually contributing from into society instead of just drawing resources out of society. I have a gentleman who is an expert in this whole area. It's involved internationally as well as has a very solid base in the United States. This is Chuck D. Vollmer. Charles is his formal name. He is the founder and author of what's called Jobenomics and the Jobenomics blog. He's been on Emerald Planet before. And Chuck, it's always good to have you back.
Good evening.
Thank you for letting me call you Chuck.
Well,
usually it's sir or something like that.
Not so, audience.
Anyway, we're glad to have you back. And the Jobenomics blog, this is something from the very first time that we met at the time of really launching your book to now it's just like on overdrive and what it's doing. And that shows there's a tremendous amount of interest in what it is that you're doing and how you're doing and the way that you deep dive into the data. And I wanted to say that up front because it's very impressive what you're doing. But looking at these different revolutions, you're using this, and there's a number of those, and we're going to kind of march through some of these. But what is this about the energy technology revolution that's going on? Explain that. But first of all, let's give them a little flavor of Jobenomics and how that in itself is a revolution and it lends itself to this phraseology that you use.
Jobenomics is about mass producing small business and jobs. And the reason we focus on small business is that small business employs 80% of the people in the United States and created 80% of all the new jobs so far this decade. So how do you mass produce the jobs? If you're really looking at creating 20 million new jobs in the next decade, you have to get in the mainstream of what is going on from a national and global initiative viewpoint. Technology revolutions often define these mainstreams. In the past, I think I got a slide. In the past, World War II, we had the military technology revolution, and the United States had 50% of the world's GDP after World War II. So it was very easy to throw lots of money at military technology and spin it off. The airline industry came to a lot of the advances in the airplane, the space industry, even the internet became out of ARPANET, and in the materials industry, and so it created tens of millions of new jobs. But the military technology revolution, now that we're about 20% of the world's GDP and everybody else has got a little bit more money, it's probably a more efficient way. So in the 80s, the United States was considered by Japan and a lot of other countries to be the Rust Belt. The big three automakers were going out of business. And we were all saying, oh no, it's not going to happen. And what happened was the internet technology revolution. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, tens of millions of new jobs, raised a lot of boats. And that was called the internet technology, the ITR. Well, today there's two revolutions that are going on. The first one is the energy technology revolution, and the other one is the network technology. And they're really going to transform not only the economy, but the labor force and business.
Now, looking at the energy technology, what are some of the things that's happened that has allowed that to be? Because 10 years ago, at least, we're talking about the United States was totally a net importer of energy from all over the globe. And within 5 years later, all of a sudden we had a surplus that we could even export, which we are exporting some of the fossil fuels out of here. So looking at it, what's some of the technologies that came to be that started to employ people, but also at the same time to have this direction towards really a very new economy?
Yeah, well, the energy is what sustains economies, okay? And it's businesses that change the economies, and jobs sustain the businesses. So energy is fundamental. We have the report now is 170 pages and soon to be 200 pages. I think your slide says 70, but it is a massive document. And it's unique from the viewpoint. It is probably the only document about energy that really approaches energy from a business and jobs perspective, as opposed to a consumption and that type of thing. So if you had technology A and technology B, both the same price and both produce 1 joule of energy, which one would you pick? You pick the one that has the most jobs.
Of course.
Okay, and so the Energy Technology Revolution report looks at the whole ecosystem of energy, from renewables to fossils to nuclear to exotics to advanced transportation. And a big deal that everybody does not look at is energy services. Not only the energy efficiency, energy security, energy assurance, energy as a service, even the whole disaster recovery and preparedness part of the thing is. So we look at the jobs in the United States, much like the healthcare system, you can't tell how many people really are employed there.
Now, why is that, Chuck?
Because we tend to do stovepipes. You know, we look at the automobile industry, the automotive end, those.
But they all bleed together.
That's
That's
right.
something we forget.
Yeah, you have to look at the ecosystem.
Right.
Okay, and then you start weighing the trades between, for example, the renewables and the fossils, okay, or the exotics and the different services.
Well, one thing about it too, you're talking about jobs, creating jobs, but really the underlying base of what you do is creating new small businesses, or small to medium scale enterprises as we call it. And then that's where you really have this generator, this engine out there that starts creating all these jobs. So when you're looking at the small to medium scale enterprises, what's the timeline and the story behind that versus just the jobs?
Okay, we'll stay at the energy technology revolution.
We're going to stay at that.
Yeah,
right.
Right, that level. We have a fundamental choice in the United States to make. We have a $2 trillion over the next 20 years of modernizing a 50-year-old, 70-year-old electrical utility system.
Right.
Okay, which is a centralized system.
Right.
Okay. Or we can go to a distributed or dispersed. And distributed means is kind of, you have the home base that you have a net metering and that you can sell some electricity back. Or dispersed means you're totally off the grid. It's like the photovoltaics on the street lights, or your pool heater, that's
right.
using anything. Nobody records the amount of energy. So the idea, if we can shift from a centralized to a distributed and dispersed, we could create 10 to 20 million new jobs at point of use. And those are all kind of local jobs.
And those are all green jobs.
They're all green jobs. These are the installation jobs, for example.
Weatherization, as we call it.
Yeah, for example, you want a little wind turbine on your thing, you go to Home Depot and get a wind turbine, but you don't know how to get on the roof, or how to maintain, or how to hook the wind turbine up to all the rest of the stuff. The electrical jobs, the installation jobs, the plumbing jobs, or if you want to put a geothermal unit in your home, in an upgraded geothermal. And how you do that. If you do it at point of use, which is very efficient, because we lose so much energy over the transmission lines, by the time it's generated and received, used by the consumer, we're only using a fraction.
Now, the estimate I've heard is that we're generating all this and we're getting less than a third of it.
Well, it's probably
at the end of the pipe.
that. If you take for an incandescent bulb, from generation by the time you get it, and losing the heat and the transmission and stuff, you're down like less than half of 1%.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible.
We made a big jump just going from incandescents to LEDs, because we got rid of the heat and we turned that into light.
Right.
And that's the miracle between LEDs and incandescents.
Well, it's just like the lights in the studio. We went from incandescents to LEDs, and we had to recalibrate the entire heating and air conditioning system in the whole building because of how we had to chill this room, and now it's very comfortable to have that. So it's been a tremendous boon as far as the television broadcasting. Looking at climate change, one of the things that, there's this supposed debate between is there really climate change, is there not climate change, and all that, which is probably a false pretense. But what's climate change to the importance of renewables? What do you see that in this whole transition you're talking about as far as the energy technology revolution?
First of all, I think Jobenomics is a staunch believer in climate change. Okay, where we differ on that is what to do about it. Okay, the problem that we have is not only at the energy technology revolution, or we've dumbed it down, to old traditional approaches. The same thing that we've done to climate change. We've just made it renewables a mantra, and anybody would say anything about it, the other technologies is an anti-renewable guy. We're not that. We in our book on the energy technology, we probably have half the book designated to renewables. If you look at renewables in 2030 are only going to produce about 11% of the electricity in the United States. Solar is probably half of 1%. The big three are biofuels, biomass, hydro, and wind's coming on strong.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
But the other ones like solar. Now, and so we look at what are the limitations of all the renewables, and there are a lot. And how do you overcome that, from power density to storage to intermittency to about 10 other things you can read about. And we say, look, these are the types of things that we need to tackle. And so we think that renewables are absolutely key, but if there's only going to be 10%, 11% by 2030, we're going to have to spend more time on the other side of the equation, of trading dirtier for clean. For example, we're trading more natural gas for coal, and even on coal, we're working with a number of coal things to be able to make it much cleaner coal.
Right.
And those technologies.
Well, we're running out of time. Urban mining, what is it and why is it important?
Urban mining, one of the key renewables is waste to energy. And so we look at urban mining from the viewpoint as how do you take all the waste products from the municipal solid waste, construction, demolition, to the e-waste, to tires, everything else, and how do you monetize that? And what has happened in Jobenomics is we've gotten a lot of response from the local communities and the inner cities in particular, and they can't afford it, to do the community-based business generating and all the rest of the stuff. I said, why are you giving $50 million away? And I showed them, if you just monetize the e-waste streams, I can give you $50 million a year, and we're working with 2 leading companies in Europe that have 100 operational plants, that we can give a turnkey operation within 12 months to produce a revenue stream of $50 million to use for business and jobs creation efforts in the inner cities.
And also you're diverting all that from going into the landfills, which is perpetual cost.
Or into the air,
and the water.
That's right. For example, electronic waste is from an atmospherics is 97% cleaner than doing an open pit mine.
Right, we got it. And if you don't have to mine, every BTU you don't use is the best BTU. This is Charles D. Chuck Vollmer. He's the founder and author of Jobenomics and the Jobenomics blog. Thank you for being with us as we talk about energy, urban mining, as we create the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfripp@aol.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America, and reading is fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for what we call the best of the best practices being developed in large and small and medium-sized countries, and also within their universities, the businesses, and through NGOs and other organizations that are helping us move towards 2050. And as we talked about in Emerald Planet before, is that we're expecting about another 2 billion people, yes, about 2 billion people to be on the planet by 2050. And how are we going to be able to meet that challenge for food, the fuel, the fiber, the basic infrastructure that is needed, and so that people actually have an increased quality of life and not just exist. And so there's a gentleman sitting right beside me who's been on Emerald Planet before, an excellent guest and doing absolutely wonderful work. This is Charles D., goes by Chuck Vollmer. He's the author and the editor and publisher for the Jobenomics blog. I'm going to feature that first this time. And he has a book called Jobenomics, and that's what all this cascaded out of that work over these many years, Chuck. And welcome back to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Say, for our viewers, tell us a little bit about the Jobenomics blog, because we've talked about the book many times, but the blog seems to be on steroids as far as interest, people coming to your website, gleaning all this deep data that you're coming up with. Tell us about the blog, and why did you think the blog was so necessary? That's a lot of work.
Yeah,
to throw in.
Yeah, we the blog site grew out of not only the original book, but which was published, but we've got 5 or 6 other books now of equal volume. We're going to talk this segment about the network technology revolution. But there's probably 1,500 pages, maybe up to 2,000 pages that are on our website, which is also a blog site. And it's gone viral. Last year at this time, we had 1/4 of the amount of hits. We've 400% increase in the last year. We're over about 650, 700,000 hits a month from all around the world. About 90% of it from the U.S. It's predominantly a U.S. initiative, but the 10% of the viewers are from around the world and requesting us to come to do Jobenomics China, Jobenomics Nigeria, or whatever.
Yeah, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And by doing this, as far as this blog is taking Jobenomics, which was something that conceived at the beginning of the 21st century, but actually now you're just pushing way beyond that. So you're going what you call beyond the horizon and all the research that you're doing. But going back to the blog, and then we're going to get into this network technology revolution, about using big data and going in and really teasing out all the numbers, because you're one of the few persons in the United States that's actually doing that. So why do you spend that much time and that much effort and money in order to go down such a deep dive into the data? What's the importance, and then relate that back to the blog and its success?
I think globally, it's not only the United States where everybody's coming anti-establishment. You see it in Europe and China and Middle East, whatever. And so people just don't believe what they see or hear on TV and radio and stuff like that. So by putting a couple thousand pages of real data that is deeply footnoted, and actually given every footnote's got the URL where they can get the data themselves, allows them to make their own conclusion about where the fastest growing industries are, where they need to position their communities. We divide this thing up demographically, financially, etc., and we let people to craft it themselves. As a matter of fact, communities, particularly mayors and governors, are now coming to us and asking us to help them craft a strategy for their municipality, for their county, for their state, and so it's the blog that really is that providing them that information.
You know, and it's out there, it's immediate, and also, like you're talking about, doing all the URL, the attributions to where the original sources are is critically important, particularly for the internationals. Yeah. And I think this is something, because I actually talked about you in one of the presentations I made yesterday for a Chinese delegation, and they're really interested because they now realize that they have to go beyond where they are, you know, as far as enhancing their local, whether it's a city, town, or province, and they need to have this information on an international scale. But looking at the family of initiatives and this whole thing as far as the network technology revolution. Explain what this network technology revolution is and why it's important.
Yeah, we have national level initiatives. We talked about in an earlier segment, the energy, we have the network technology, we have an urban mining, and we have a rural initiative, a rural American initiative in development. But the most fascinating of all three are the network technology revolution. We put an initial about 70-page report on our website, but the book that is coming out is 250 pages that takes a deep dive. And and the network technology revolution is not an information technology revolution 2.0. It's something totally different. The internet technology revolution was actually developed to enhance workers. The network technology can not only enhance it, but can replace. And the network technology revolution is a perfect storm. And this is a very busy slide that you're seeing up behind me, where we go through in detail about 36 to 40 different technologies, from big data to semantic webs to beaconing to enamel networks and artificial intelligence, blogs, bots, you know,
spiders, swarms, Trojans,
all that stuff. You know, we go through it and say, this is a perfect storm, and how is it going to really transform the United States? To a lot of studies that from very notable places that we've seen is that we're familiar that automation, computer automation, is automated the factory floor with robotics, and but it is now starting to automate routine cognitive jobs. And in the process, over the next decade and a half, about half of all U.S. workers could be obsoleted by the technologies listed on that chart.
Well, the whole thing about it, when you talk about Uber, is you're coming out with their driverless cars. Yeah. Of course, all your big automobile agencies and manufacturers are doing that very thing. But then you look at the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and others of the year, they're trying to get it down so they have 2 or 3 employees and they can, you know, feed as many thousands of people that want to come in. So when you look at those two extremes, the driverless automobile or, you know, a robot, you know, the mechanics making your hamburger, that shows you a profound change is coming. And what you talk about in all this is that in essence, what is giveth is taketh, right?
Yes.
What's given is taken away. And so explain why you have all of these new jobs, tens of thousands, millions of new jobs, but at the same time, you're losing almost the same number. And this is something you and I talked about way back when I first read your book and we talked about
the United States has got a very laissez-faire approach to job and business creation. And unlike other countries like Great Britain and China, they've got a very structured approach to what is called the digital economy. If you switch to the next slide, we could take a quick look at that. The digital economy, envision it as kind of the 7 blind men and the elephant. You know, the elephant's the blind men, where we have the platform economy, which is all the big guys. We have the Amazons, the Alibabas, and there's about 170 of these that are really going to are the new giants. Their net worth is much more than any of the old industrial. Then we got the gig economy, and the gig economy everybody thinks is like a gigabit. No, it's like a gig in the 1920s where you get a part-time job. It's contingency workforce. Right now, today's workforce is 60% standard and 50% contingency. These are part-time freelancer stuff. In the next 10 years, it's going to be 50-50. And that whole gig economy, and the gig economy guys make about 40% less than standard. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and then we have the apps bot, AI economy. The one's most fascinating, the bot economy. You know about Siri and Cordova. They have, in China, they have a thing called Economies, and it's called Little Sister, and she is so good that she's actually a weather girl on national TV. And 40 to 60 million people call her every day just because they're lonely and they want to have personal chats and devices about their boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you got the Internet of Things economy, a data-driven economy, the electronic EM economy. So we go in a deep dive in each of those to see, well, these are where the jobs are going to be. These are where the businesses. And what's most important about this is that on the bottom of your chart, you see that the United States is about 6th or 7th place in that because we have a very laissez-faire. Now, what is really particularly important from a jobs creation, we look at the different demographics. The Gen Z are our digital natives. Gen Z are 21-year-olds. We call them screenagers for the amount of time they spend on the screen. Well, these kids don't want traditional jobs. They want to be apps developer, bots developers in the daytime, Uber drivers in the evening, and a bartender late at evening or whatever, and they're going to glue. So the question is for the digital economy, the future of our U.S. economy lays on the digital natives like the Generation Z and to some generation, the millennials.
And we're about running out of time, but quickly I want to ask this question is, what are we doing to foster and support the digital natives, as they're called, as they move through the system and become more important?
From a policy viewpoint, almost nothing in the United States.
Nothing's happening right now?
Not a policy.
Mm-hmm. So what do we need to do?
Well, what we need to do, we have a process of how do you mass produce small business through community-based business generators and tailor it to Gen Z. And every Gen Z kid that get out of high school should have their own business. They ought to understand, have the fundamentals, because about 80% of them are going to be in business. So incorporate them right at the beginning. Teach them the fundamentals, and then let them go after their dreams.
Now, looking at this work platform, I know you're comparing China with the United States. That's an interesting comparison. Yeah. But tell us about it. Then we're going to go out on that.
Okay. We have a 40, 50-page report on the. This is the platform. These are the big guys. Okay. Right now, the big guys, we're running neck and neck between China and the U.S. On the U.S. side, we tend to be more foundational. We're the ones that build all the new technology, where the Chinese, whether it's Alibaba, JD.com, Tencent, Baidu, they tend to be more apply. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, that China is trying to raise 700 million people out of poverty, the rural poor, by teaming with their platform guys to mass produce small businesses, especially in e-commerce. We in the United States are doing nothing. We're mainly involved with social networking and entertainment and that type of thing. We have the capability.
Serious versus non-serious. I think
absolutely.
Way you could summarize that. This is Charles D. Chuck Vollmer of Jobenomics and Jobenomics blog. Thank you for being here for this. And thank you as we create the Emerald Planet.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about $3,000. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet.
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
He's a great guy.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, products, and people are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director for Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. And we come to you on a week-to-week basis so that you as the viewer, wherever you are on the planet, can actually link into our website and have a chance to follow up on any of the people that we feature, and also about 2,000 other people that we've interviewed now from 101 different countries. And so we invite you to come to our website, www.emerald-planet.org, www.emerald-planet.org. And I have a gentleman sitting right beside me that we've been interacting for some years now. This is Charles, goes by Chuck D. Vollmer. He is the author, founder of what's called Jobenomics and Jobenomics blog. And he's really a pioneer in one sense, but also he's a visionary in the other. Because what he's doing is taking all the data that's available to anyone on the planet that wants to go in and do the research and actually making it readable so that people actually can find it, and then they can cross-reference everything that goes out in his blog on a month-to-month basis. And so Chuck, welcome back to the Emerald Planet TV. It's always good to have you here.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. Looking at the city and state programs, this is something that has been evolving for a period of time, and as I said earlier before we went on, we want to put the rural areas in there too, even though almost 80% of the American population now live in urban areas. That means there's a 20% somewhere else, and many of those are truly hurting. As far as the economies are concerned, many of the businesses have moved out. But going to this city-state programs through Jobenomics, tell us a little bit about why Jobenomics is doing this really. The deep dive is that you're doing it state by state, but also city by city and even many smaller communities.
As we discussed in previous segments, we have the book that was published, and then we've written about 5 or 6 other books, and then we've had 3 major initiatives that were national level: the energy technology, the network technology, urban mining. And we're in the 4th now, the Urban America initiative. We get the blog. The blog got the word out to it. There's probably 1,500 pages of all this data. I mean, the downloads, you can go one page, you can download 1,000 pages, but the blog is up to 650,000 hits a month now, and it's going to go north of 1 million hopefully by the first of the year. Mm-hmm. But that's getting the data, getting the word out. And but people that have been come to us, we spent a lot of time at the federal level, never got much interest in either the Democrats or the Republicans. They had their own plans, very ideologically split. Got more interest at the governors, and we got tremendous response at the local level, the mayors.
Which is where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
They're the ones that are there looking day to day, and they walk down the street, see their neighbors.
That's right.
Either have jobs or no jobs, or
that's exactly
going
right.
back to school or whatever it may be. So going back to this level, we talked about the feds. People probably intuitively understand that the problem there. But looking at the states and the locals, you've really inverted the pyramid.
That's right. So we have about 4 city-level initiatives, and we have 3 state initiatives. We're working with the either community leaders or the mayors or the governors or the governor's staff or in that. And for example, the 2 oldest one is Jobenomics New York City. It's run for the guy that's run for mayor, a guy named Michael Faulkner. The mayor election for mayor is in November of 17. You go on his website, he's campaigning under Jobenomics, and we are trying to produce 1 million net new jobs in New York City across the 5 boroughs. We've also had a pilot project in Jobenomic Harlem. He's an African-American reverend ex-NFL football player kind of guy, street preacher type, that lives in Harlem. In Harlem, of the 280-some neighborhoods in the 5 boroughs, is probably one of the hardest hit. And so we're trying to mass produce small businesses, and we've got a very detailed plan on how to do that in things like shared mobility, shared accommodations, digital economy, healthcare, and those types of things.
Yeah, it's really interesting because earlier we talked about, you know, the centralized grid, distributed and diversified. But you know, our good friend who you've actually met before, this Mark Davis, who is doing great things in Ward 8, which is you know, very low socioeconomic situation here in Washington, D.C., but he was actually invited by the mayor's office to come up and meet with them, actually bringing in solar energy and solar jobs to those areas, and Harlem was their first target. And so they actually have about 40 schools they've identified they want to start with as a pilot up there. So the cities really are aware that they have to reach into all these different and disparate communities to create jobs there so that people not having to travel long distances.
Yeah, Mark and his WDC initiative is a good example of what can be done. And again, you can mass produce highly scalable jobs in businesses. So if what he can do in one neighborhood, he can do in other neighborhoods. We can start other splinter types of things. And he's providing jobs for the people at the base of the pyramid. These are not skill level Brainiac 5 guys, you know. That doesn't mean they're dumb. That means is the fact that they just don't have a lot of skills. And his program teaches skills-based training and certification.
Right, and also he's been now invited to Chicago and some other places to do the same thing.
So how do you mass produce those kind of businesses, those kind of things? You take one and you can do 100 of them.
Well, then that's the whole thing about it. But looking at the other side of this whole thing, the rural areas, you know, the 20% are not connected. Many of these areas don't even have the internet, or spotty or very slow internet. Some places you hardly get cell service. What can be done in those areas where you're tying all these things we're talking about in Jobenomics, Chuck, so that we're being inclusive, just like you talked about in China, those 500 to 700 million. How do we bring them into the fold so they're part of the prosperity?
The governors that, you know, for example, we're working with Jobenomics North Carolina and Jobenomics Delaware and Maryland. It always comes up is that, most of the stuff is urban and suburban, where 80% of the people live, about 20%. So we really started looking at the kind of jobs for the rural America. And we're teamed with a group called Freedom Farms of how to do micro farming and also create net zero communities. We're going to focus on veterans at the beginning because they have the skills and they've kind of gone through a due diligence process. We know who they are, okay? And we're going to use hydroponics and as well as waste to energy as the basis to create the micro farms and the micro net zero communities in the rural areas. We're also looking at aquaculture. And we're looking at regenerative agriculture. Regenerative is how do you replenish the earth? Well, we take all the organic municipal waste that is streams that are coming out there. We can turn that into fertilizer and use it as opposed to compost or fertilizer. Use it for regenerative alcohol.
Plant nutrients.
Yeah, wind. You know, renewable energy, because the farmers now in many parts of the country are you know, putting windmills up on their farms. It's
Yeah,
very
and
low
in many
intrusive.
cases, they're actually earning more money from the windmills
That's right.
than they are from anything they're doing in the
Exactly. And so with solar and say, hydro and geothermal or all the types of things that we could add to the rural communities. And part of the thing that is attractive is a lot of the digital economy that we talked about in e-commerce doesn't really need to be in an urban area. We can create a community of interest in a net zero community for the digital kids, you know, and they can work out of there. They could be just like they're working anywhere in the world.
That's fantastic. But going into the inner city, I know this is something you and I have been working on. We have some groups that are there, as far as Christopher King and others, Conscious Capitalism, very dedicated to the inner city, and they're using Baltimore as their base. They know it well. Most of them are from there, but that's a very exciting initiative that you have. You're working with some communities of faith, but tell us what this chart really is all about.
Yeah, well, I've met with many of the people that you have talked about that are involved with that, but they all tend to be in project oriented, right? This project, that project. So we met with, actually it was a Jewish rabbi that came and had heard what we were doing, and he said, if I put together a meeting for you, will you come up and give him a lecture? So we did that. And they were all the inner city guys, mainly black community leaders, and they said, can you write us a Jobenomics plan? So we would sit down and wrote a Jobenomics plan, and then we took it to the economic development people. And they were bragging about the fact that Maryland's doing better than the national average, the county's doing better than the metro's doing, but the elephant in the room was the inner city. And that came that chart there. So we rewrote the plan and said, hey, look, it's lost 100,000 jobs over the last year. How do we create 100,000 new jobs in the inner city, which is really focused on West Baltimore? If you flip it over to the next slide, we could kind of talk about it. And this is the guy that's leading. He's on the governor's workforce. His name is Dr. Reverend Al Hathaway, and he's got about 20 other kind of community leaders. It's been in all the front page newses and all the Afro-American newspapers around the country. The thing has really taken off. And we focused on the West Baltimore, the area that is on the upper left-hand corner of the top slide. And West Baltimore is where Freddie Gray was killed. And the unrest and the stuff. In West Baltimore, there's 14 neighborhoods. 13 of the 14 are 80% black. 2 of those neighborhoods are 98% black. Poverty rates at 70%. And the only mixed-race neighborhood in West Baltimore, which was 45% white, black and 39% white, was the neighborhood that Freddie was killed in. So that's where we want to put our operations center. But so we looked at the demographics and stuff on this. And if you flip to just the next slide, so we really got into a deep dive and say, how do I create these? So we picked 4 areas.
And we have about 45 seconds, all we have left.
Okay, manufacturing, healthcare, social assistance, demolition, and digital economy. We're trying to raise $200 million in micro business funds, and we break each of those 4 areas down in very specific areas. And what we have is a master plan of how to create the jobs in the most financially distressed neighborhood in probably the United States.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, what do you see for the growth and expansion of Jobenomics blog and Jobenomics itself?
Well, the meeting that we had with the Chinese said if you turn to Chinese, we'll have 10 million hits a month rather than 1 million hits. And as far as Jobenomics, we'd like to have initiatives similar to this that are successful in all the cities and states.
That's fantastic. Anyway, this is Chuck Vollmer. He is the author, founder, Jobenomics blog. Chuck, it's always good to have you with us. You're doing absolutely fantastic work.
And so are you at Emerald Planet.
We love you. Anyway, dear viewer, thank you for being with us as we talk about all these very key integrated issues, but also the solutions. Solutions is where it's at as we create the Emerald Planet.